You look unusually pleased with yourself.
I successfully updated the department's lab computers without disabling the network.
A genuine miracle.
Please, miracles require less paperwork.
How is the new semester going?
Pretty well. My students have reached the point where they're figuring out that copying code off the internet sometimes creates more problems than it solves.
That lesson applies to home repair too. I watched one video about fixing a sink. 3 hours later, I was standing in the kitchen holding a pipe while water sprayed the ceiling.
Did you turn off the water first?
Apparently that was in part 2.
See? This is why humanity needs grace.
You can't go 5 minutes without working God into a conversation?
That was mostly a joke.
Mostly.
Fair? Does it bother you?
No, you've never been pushy about it. I just don't understand how someone with a doctorate in computer science believes all that stuff.
Which stuff?
God, miracles, an invisible person watching everyone. It sounds like something people invented because the world was frightening and they needed to feel protected.
Would you mind if I asked what you actually mean by God?
You're the Christian. Shouldn't you know?
I know what I mean. I'm asking what you're rejecting.
An old man in the sky who controls everything and gets angry when people break his rules.
I don't believe in that God either.
You absolutely believe in God.
Yes, but not some old guy with a beard sitting on a cloud somewhere. Historic Christianity describes God as the eternal, non-physical foundation of reality, the reason anything exists at all.
That sounds more sophisticated, but it could just be sophisticated make-believe.
It could be. But the real question is whether there are good reasons to think it actually is true.
You think science proves God?
No. Science studies the physical world. If God is the cause of the physical world, then God isn't one more physical object sitting out there for us to find with a telescope, right?
Convenient.
It would be convenient if I used that as an excuse to dodge evidence, sure. But that's not what I'm doing. I'm making a distinction between different kinds of questions. A metal detector is a useful tool, right? You just wouldn't use one to decide whether a poem is beautiful.
So how would you decide whether God exists?
By asking what best explains the universe. Same kind of reasoning we use in science, history, and everyday life, right?
But you're starting with Christianity and working backward.
Then let's not start with Christianity.
Seriously?
Seriously. No Bible verses, and no assuming Jesus is divine. Let's start smaller than that. Does reality give us any reason to suspect that some kind of creator exists?
And if the answer is no?
Then we should say no. A belief doesn't get to be true just because it makes us feel better.
Good, because religion has never felt especially comforting to me.
Given everything you've been through, frankly, I get it.
Losing my parents, being broke most of my life, cancer, surgeries that were supposed to help but left me in pain. I don't look at that and see somebody carefully managing the universe.
And I'm not going to pretend some clever argument makes any of that painless. Your experience raises a serious question about God's goodness. But it might help to separate two questions. Does a creator exist? And if one does, can that creator be good?
You think we can discuss the first without dodging the second?
We can keep the second question on the table without letting it stop us from looking at the first one, right?
All right, but science has replaced supernatural explanations over and over. Why isn't God just an explanation people invented before science?
That's exactly where we should start.
All right, why isn't God just an explanation people used before science?
Because that criticism actually works against a certain kind of God claim. And I agree with it.
You agree that people invented gods to explain things they didn't understand?
Sometimes, absolutely. Thunder got blamed on gods. Disease got blamed on spirits. Filling a gap in what you know with a supernatural answer has a terrible track record, frankly.
That sounds like a fairly strong argument against your position.
Against a God of the gaps position, sure, that's fair. But historic Christianity never defined God as the missing mechanism inside a natural process. That's not the claim.
Translate that out of professor language.
Science can explain how rain forms through evaporation, condensation, air pressure, and temperature. The God question asks why a universe with water, weather, and dependable natural laws exists at all.
So you're moving God farther back whenever science advances.
Only if God started inside the chain of physical causes. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying God is the reason there's a chain there to investigate it all.
That still sounds suspiciously convenient.
Then use a computer example. Understanding every instruction in a program doesn't answer whether the program has an author. The mechanism and the source are different questions.
Programs have authors because we've watched people write programs. We haven't watched anyone write a universe.
Correct. The analogy separates the questions. It doesn't prove the answer. We still need evidence that reality points beyond itself.
What if nature is self-contained and doesn't point anywhere else?
Then a creator would be unnecessary. We have to compare that possibility with the possibility that nature is dependent and needs an explanation.
Science may eventually explain where the universe came from.
It may explain an earlier physical state, and that's worth something. But an earlier state still leaves you asking, why that state? And why those laws?
Maybe the question has no answer. Children can keep asking why forever.
Maybe, but we shouldn't declare the question meaningless just because the answer is difficult. We normally look for explanations when things appear contingent.
Contingent meaning they could have been different?
Right. Your coffee exists, but it didn't have to. Same goes for planets, stars, and apparently the particular arrangement of our whole universe.
A coffee cup needing an explanation doesn't prove the entire universe needs one.
Agreed. Which is exactly why it's an argument you examine, not a slogan you repeat.
What would count as evidence instead of a slogan?
Features of reality that are more expected if a creator exists than if the universe is simply an unexplained fact.
That sounds like probability, not proof.
Most serious reasoning is probabilistic. Courts, medicine, history, and science compare explanations without demanding mathematical certainty.
Which features do you think favor a creator?
A universe that had a beginning, physical reality depending on something, the deep mathematical order running underneath nature, and conditions that actually allow complex life.
That is several arguments bundled together.
Yes, I prefer a cumulative case. One clue can be disputed. Several independent clues may point in the same direction.
And none of them is going to end with a scientist finding God in a microscope.
No more than a microscope could find the laws of logic. Science is powerful, but every tool has a proper range.
Religion does make scientific claims sometimes, and science can show they're wrong.
Sure, Christians can misread Scripture, get nature wrong, or defend a bad argument. Faith doesn't make you immune to correction.
You're comfortable letting evidence correct your interpretation?
I have to be. If God is the source of truth, honest investigation isn't the enemy.
Fine, but saying the universe simply exists still seems cleaner than adding God.
It's one possible explanation, sure. The next question is whether the universe looks like the kind of thing that can just exist without a cause.
And you think its beginning is the problem?
Its beginning is our next clue.
Okay, what makes you think the universe actually had a beginning?
Modern cosmology strongly suggests the observable universe developed from an extremely hot, dense early state. Many models also point toward a finite cosmic past.
The Big Bang was an explosion in empty space, right?
Not quite. It's space itself that's expanding. There wasn't some central point with debris flying out into a pre-existing empty room.
Then what happened before it?
That may be like asking, what is north of the North Pole? If physical time began with the universe, there may not be an earlier physical moment.
You just said the universe needs a cause. Causes normally happen before effects.
Inside time, yes. A cause of time wouldn't have to be earlier by a clock. It would be prior in explanation. Like an author explaining a story without appearing on an earlier page.
That is difficult to picture.
It is. Our imaginations are trained on objects in space and events in time. Reality isn't obligated to fit that training.
Doesn't your argument say everything needs a cause?
No. It says whatever begins to exist needs a cause. If everything needed a cause, then God would need one too, and the whole argument falls apart on itself.
How do you know things that begin need causes?
Because something cannot come from absolute nothing without any reason. We rely on that principle in every investigation.
Quantum physics has events without causes.
Some interpretations call it indeterministic, sure. But those events are still happening inside quantum fields that are governed by mathematical laws. That's not absolute nothing. That's something.
I have seen headlines saying the universe came from nothing.
In popular physics, nothing often means a vacuum, a field, a wave function, or a law-governed state. Philosophical nothing has no space, time, matter, energy, fields, or laws.
Physicists may eventually develop a model that goes back forever.
They may. Cosmology is active research, so I'm not going to pretend one model has settled every question. The argument has to survive that uncertainty.
That is less confident than most apologetics videos.
Confidence should follow the evidence, not how loud the background music is.
Do philosophical arguments add anything beyond the current science?
Some philosophers argue that an actually infinite sequence of completed past events creates serious problems. Others disagree, so I treat that as supporting evidence rather than a settled theorem.
So your case uses both cosmology and philosophy, with qualifications attached.
Exactly. Neither field should be forced to promise more than it can deliver, but together they make a finite past reasonable to consider.
Suppose the universe did begin. Why call its cause God?
I wouldn't jump straight to the God of Christianity. We can infer only a few features at this stage.
Such as?
A cause of all physical space, time, matter, and energy could not be another ordinary physical object within that system.
So it would be non-physical and outside cosmic time.
That's the direction the inference goes. And it would also need enough causal power to account for a universe.
Does that make it a person?
Not automatically. Some philosophers do argue that an agent can timelessly choose a first temporal effect. And I'm not saying that's crazy, but that step needs its own defense.
Could there be several causes?
That doesn't get us a head count on its own. Simplicity leans toward one sufficient cause, unless the evidence pushes you to more. But that's a lean, not a mathematical proof.
You are being annoyingly careful.
Occupational hazard. Computer scientists learn what happens when one hidden assumption reaches production.
Even a transcendent cause could produce a terrible universe by accident.
True, a beginning may support a cause, but it doesn't yet establish intelligence, goodness, or concern for human beings.
Then what is supposed to move the argument toward intelligence?
The structure of the universe. Its basic conditions fall within ranges that permit stars, chemistry, and complex life.
You mean fine-tuning?
Exactly. And frankly, it deserves a much fairer hearing than it usually gets.
What exactly do you mean when you say the universe is fine-tuned?
The laws, constants, and early conditions of the universe allow long-lived stars, stable chemistry, and organized complexity. Many different settings would not.
That sounds like the universe was adjusted specifically for us.
The term can sound that way, but the observation comes first. We find ourselves in a life-permitting range. That's the observation. The explanation comes after.
A puddle thinks its hole was designed to fit it perfectly.
That analogy is right about selection effects. Observers can only observe conditions compatible with observers, sure. But that doesn't explain why those conditions exist in the first place.
Maybe life would adapt to completely different constants.
Some unfamiliar forms of complexity may be possible. The argument shouldn't assume carbon-based humans are the only option. Still, many modeled changes prevent stable complexity altogether.
Apologists quote dramatic probabilities with dozens of zeros.
I avoid those unless the probability distribution is actually justified. Experts debate how you even define the possible range, let alone how you measure it. False precision doesn't help anybody.
So even the probability is uncertain.
Yeah, uncertainty doesn't erase the pattern, but it should lower our confidence and improve our manners.
What are the actual explanations on the table?
Broadly, physical necessity, chance, a larger multiverse, design, or some explanation we haven't discovered.
Physical necessity means the constants could not have been different?
Right. A deeper theory might someday derive them uniquely. At present, we don't have an accepted theory showing every life-permitting value had to be what it is.
Chance seems straightforward. Somebody wins a lottery.
Chance labels an outcome. It doesn't always explain the setup. we would still ask what generated the possibilities and why that process exists.
Then the multiverse gives us many lottery tickets.
Potentially, if many universes realize different conditions, observing a rare, life-permitting one becomes less surprising.
That sounds more scientific than a creator.
Some multiverse proposals grow from physical theories, but testing them and defining probabilities remain difficult. They deserve consideration, not automatic victory.
And a designer predicts a universe capable of life?
A rational creator could have reasons to produce embodied conscious beings. That makes life-permitting order less surprising, though we cannot simply assume the creator's motives.
We appeared after billions of years, in a universe mostly hostile to us.
Size and age don't determine value. A large, old universe may be necessary for heavy elements, planets, and life. But your objection still cautions against saying everything was built for our comfort.
Design feels like seeing intention in any lucky result.
That danger is real. A design argument is stronger when the conditions support independently recognizable goods like stable order, complexity, consciousness, and rational discovery.
What about Occam's razor? A whole extra mind seems expensive.
Occam's razor weighs assumptions and explanatory power, not merely the number of nouns. A simple cause can explain many effects, but whether God is simple is another debate.
The universe simply existing uses fewer words.
It is a shorter sentence. It also leaves the universe's order and life-permitting structure unexplained. Brevity and explanatory depth aren't identical.
But adding God may only move the mystery back one step.
It would if God were another complicated physical object. Classical Christianity proposes a necessary, non-physical foundation rather than another machine needing assembly.
You still haven't ruled out necessity, chance, or a multiverse.
Right. Fine-tuning isn't a knockout punch. It just makes design a serious candidate worth putting up against the alternatives.
So your case is that a beginning, dependence, and fine-tuning fit a creator better together.
Exactly. The force is cumulative, and every piece remains open to criticism.
Then I have the obvious criticism. Who created God?
That question takes us to the difference between dependent things and a necessary foundation.
All right. Who created God?
No one. But that's not Christians handing God some special exemption. The claim is that God never began and doesn't depend on anything else.
That sounds exactly like a special exemption.
It would be if the premise were that everything needs a cause. It's not. The premise is that things which begin, or things that depend on something else, need an explanation. That's a different claim.
And you define God, so the rule cannot touch him.
The definition tells you what kind of reality could actually end the explanatory chain. It doesn't prove that reality exists. That's what the arguments are for.
Explain the chain without using the phrase metaphysical necessity.
Your phone depends on a factory, materials, designers, energy, and physical laws. It exists, but it could have failed to exist. That's a dependent thing.
The universe contains lots of dependent things. Why can't their total simply be reality?
Because combining dependent things doesn't obviously create independence. An infinite shelf of borrowed books still doesn't explain where ownership comes from.
Maybe there is no owner. Maybe the borrowing goes back forever.
An endless sequence might explain each book by an earlier borrower, but it doesn't explain why the whole borrowing system exists in the first place.
Why must the whole system have another explanation?
It may not. The principle that contingent reality has an explanation is reasonable, but somebody can just reject it and take the universe as a brute fact.
That is my simpler option again.
Yes. The cost is giving up an ultimate explanation for why this universe and its order exist. Simplicity can become a refusal to explain.
Couldn't the universe itself be necessary?
That is logically possible. But the universe changes, contains dependent parts, and appears describable by laws and initial conditions that could have differed. It doesn't look obviously necessary.
Appearances can mislead us.
Sure, and a future theory might show more necessity than we can see right now. I'm not ruling that out. But then, let's compare it honestly instead of acting like it's already settled.
What does necessary existence even mean?
It means a reality whose existence isn't borrowed, assembled, or caused. It cannot fail because nothing outside it supplies the conditions for it to exist.
That sounds like a definition turned into an object.
A definition alone creates nothing. The argument is that dependent reality points toward some independent foundation. Then we ask what that foundation could be.
Why a mind? Why not mathematics?
Mathematical truths can describe possibilities, but abstract objects don't cause physical effects. The number 7 doesn't decide to produce a universe.
What about a fundamental quantum field?
A field is still physical, has properties, and operates according to laws. It may explain other physical states without explaining why that field and those laws exist.
You can ask why after every answer.
Only until you hit something that exists by its own nature. The debate is whether reality actually includes anything like that, and which candidate fits best.
Is that really the old question about why there is something instead of nothing?
Yes, a necessary foundation attempts to answer it without claiming that absolute nothing somehow produced everything. Whether that answer succeeds is precisely what we're evaluating.
And you think the candidate is an eternal mind?
The contingency argument supports an independent foundation. Other arguments are needed to support rationality, agency, goodness, or the specific God Christians worship.
You keep refusing to claim more than the argument gives you.
Otherwise, I'm just smuggling the conclusion through customs in a really big coat.
Fine. Suppose there is some necessary creator. Look at the world it allowed.
You're asking how a powerful creator could permit suffering.
I'm asking why I should trust an argument that ends with God when my life looks like evidence against him.
Then we should face that evidence directly, without pretending your pain is an intellectual footnote.
I don't mean suffering as an abstract puzzle. I mean losing my parents, cancer, damaged surgeries, and pain that never really leaves.
I know. And I'm not going to turn any of that into a tidy little illustration for some argument.
A creator with enough power to make a universe had enough power to prevent those things.
Yeah. If God is all-powerful and good, then suffering demands an explanation. Christianity shouldn't be asking you to pretend otherwise.
Then doesn't suffering make God logically impossible?
It creates two related challenges. The logical challenge says, God and suffering cannot coexist. The evidential challenge says, this much suffering makes God unlikely.
That distinction feels clinical.
Fair. It helps us reason, but it doesn't take anything away from what happened to you. We can use careful categories without turning into careless people.
What is the logical answer?
I'd have to know that a good God could have no morally sufficient reason to permit any suffering at all. That's a hard thing to establish.
Unknown reasons can excuse anything.
They can get abused that way, sure. We shouldn't go inventing a secret reason behind every tragedy. The narrower point is just that our limited knowledge doesn't prove a contradiction.
People usually say free will.
Free will can help explain moral evil, because meaningful freedom includes the possibility of harming others. It doesn't directly explain cancer or earthquakes.
Exactly. I didn't choose a tumor.
No, you did not. Appeals to freedom should never imply that illness is the sufferer's fault.
What about natural suffering then?
A stable, law-governed world makes action, learning, science, and responsibility possible. The same regular processes can also produce injury, disease, and disaster.
God could intervene when those laws hurt someone.
He could. Constant intervention might undermine a predictable world, but that doesn't tell us why this particular one didn't happen. The personal question is still sitting there.
Then people say suffering builds character.
Some hardship can produce courage or compassion. Saying that does not justify every loss, and telling a hurting person it was assigned for character development can be cruel.
I'm glad you said that.
Look, your pain matters here, even when we're just talking logic. Respect isn't decorative. It actually changes how the truth ought to get said.
Does heaven fix the equation?
Christian hope includes restoration and justice beyond this life. That could change the final balance, but it doesn't make present suffering imaginary or easy.
And we haven't established Christianity anyway.
Correct. Right now, that's a possible Christian answer, not evidence we get to just assume.
What do you do with prayers that seem unanswered?
I don't treat prayer like a vending machine or blame the person for lacking faith. Unanswered prayer is one of the hardest parts of belief.
So you don't have a complete answer.
No, I've got reasons why suffering might be compatible with God existing, but I can't tell you why any particular painful thing was allowed to happen. Those are two different questions.
Why believe when that evidence weighs against him?
Because evidence can point in different directions. Suffering weighs against a good God. The universe's beginning, order, and dependence may weigh toward a creator. We consider all of it.
Some Christians say that calling suffering evil secretly assumes God's moral standard.
There is a separate moral argument worth discussing, but it should never be used to silence your objection. You can recognize terrible suffering before settling the ultimate foundation of morality.
So you are not going to use my protest as evidence for God while avoiding the protest itself.
No, that would be clever rhetoric and bad friendship. Your objection stays on the scale with everything else.
Not erase one side with the other.
Exactly. An honest case should carry the unresolved weight rather than hiding it.
I appreciate that more than an easy answer.
You deserve honesty, especially from a friend.
Even if I grant a possible creator, I still don't see why that gets us to Christianity.
It doesn't. And that's the last distinction we need to make.
So a possible creator is not the same thing as Christianity.
Right. A cosmological argument cannot give us the Trinity, the Bible, the Incarnation, or the resurrection. Those require additional evidence.
Before we go there, summarize what you think we actually established.
Not certainty, just that belief in a creator can be a rational inference, not a stand-in for science or a security blanket.
Based on the universe having a beginning.
A beginning suggests a cause beyond ordinary physical reality, though cosmological models and philosophical premises remain open to debate.
And dependent things may point toward a necessary foundation.
Yeah, and that's competing with just treating the universe as a brute fact nobody explains, or saying it's necessary all on its own.
Fine-tuning adds the possibility of intelligence or design.
Alongside alternatives such as deeper necessity, chance, and a multiverse. Design deserves comparison. It doesn't get declared the winner by default.
And suffering still counts as evidence against a good creator.
It does. We can push back on the strict logical contradiction and still admit the evidential problem and the personal problem are serious.
You think the creator explanation wins when everything is combined?
I think it has greater explanatory scope than saying reality simply exists. But that judgment is an inference, not a laboratory measurement.
What can you responsibly say about this creator?
They point to a cause that isn't bound by physical space and time. Something with enormous power and maybe rational agency. That's it. They don't get you all the way to every Christian attribute yet.
No halo has appeared over your whiteboard.
They shot down my halo requisition. Budget cuts, apparently.
How would you move from a generic creator to Jesus?
By changing evidence. We'd look at the historical claims about Jesus, the resurrection, whether the testimony is reliable, and whether the Christian explanation actually fits the data best.
Miracles cannot be historical evidence if miracles are impossible.
If no creator exists, a resurrection is extraordinarily implausible. If a creator exists, we cannot dismiss it as impossible before examining the historical case.
That still doesn't mean it happened.
Correct. Possibility opens the investigation. Evidence has to carry it.
The Bible raises another pile of questions.
Authorship, transmission, genre, history, apparent contradictions, moral concerns. Each deserves its own discussion rather than one giant yes or no shortcut.
I'm not ready for that pile today.
You don't have to be. Frankly, just wrapping your head around the creator question is enough progress for one conversation.
I started by imagining an old man in the sky.
And now you know Christianity means an eternal foundation of reality, not a physical creature hiding above the clouds.
I thought science had replaced God.
Now you can distinguish scientific mechanisms from the question of why a law-governed physical world exists.
I thought asking who created God ended the argument.
Now you know the argument concerns things that begin or depend on something else, and proposes God as the independent foundation.
I am still not convinced.
You don't owe me a conclusion. I would rather you think carefully than agree quickly.
But I am less skeptical than I was. Maybe I was rejecting a caricature instead of the strongest version of the idea.
That is worth recognizing. You can still reject the stronger case, but at least now the disagreement is a real one.
What would you suggest I do next?
Write down the questions that matter most. Read thoughtful people on both sides, and don't rush yourself. If you're willing, ask God for clarity too.
Praying to someone I am not sure exists feels strange.
God, if you're there, help me follow the truth. That's it. No performance required.
I can think about that. And thank you for answering without trying to corner me.
Anytime. If more questions come up, I'm happy to keep talking, and there's no deadline on this.
No assigned reading?
I'm a professor. I can't make promises that reckless. Defending Christian faith is hard. Take it slow, show respect, and don't forget to pray for the people you talk to. Pray that God opens their hearts to hear the truth. God is in control. Pray for the wisdom to say the right thing at the right time, and let Him take care of the details. Tune in next time for more.